to the financial report. And can I get a motion? Councillor Gilroy.
I'm assuming this is page 44.
Yes.
I move that council receive the financial report for November 2017 as presented for information.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this? None? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Moving on to the treasurer's report on page 82. Can I get a motion for that one? Councillor Stenhouse.
The council received the December 2017 Treasurer's Report as presented for information.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this report? I see one.
I'm sorry, what's the LGAA again? That's okay, I'll ask Perry later. Forget it. Let's just keep on going.
Local Government Authority of Alberta, is it administrators
Local Government Administrators of Alberta?
or something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Moving on to the fees bylaw. Councillor Gilroy.
I'm going to change this just a little bit, only because this is dated the 9th day of January. It's the 23rd. So when I say the option, it'll actually say the 23rd.
Okay.
Okay. So I move that council provide second reading to the fees bylaw 012018 this 23rd day of January 2018. And do you want me to continue?
No.
No, stop there?
Stop there.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have to vote on that motion. So this is a motion we've had in front of us at the last meeting. We made a couple of small amendments. Any other questions or comments on this, or are we okay to proceed? We're okay? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. So now, if somebody would like to make another motion, we could. Okay.
I'll finish it off. I motion that, or move that council give third and final reading to the fees bylaw 012018 this 23rd day of January 2018. I'm sorry, just
Yeah.
caught me there for a second.
I know. Well, there was a couple of ninths in there, yeah, on our paper. But all right, I don't expect any other questions now. But if you do, speak now. No. All right. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to the High Prairie Horseshoe Club request on page 96. Can I get a motion? Councillor Rose.
The council provide a letter of support to the High Prairie Horseshoe Club in their efforts to hold the 2020 Canadian Championship.
Okay. Any comments on that? Councillor Gilroy.
I'm in favor, but the question I have is, how long will it take for them to find out? Any idea?
I don't.
Because that affects the next motion.
Does anybody know the answer to that? No. Okay. We don't know. So what are you driving at with that? With the next, like I know they've asked for the letter of support and they've also asked for funding.
Well, see, when we get to that, I would move that, but it be strictly contingent upon them receiving the games. I don't want to set aside that much money from our town budget when it can be used for other activities. If it's not going to be a go, and that was my premise. I like the contingent upon receipt that we have heard that they've received it. I don't want to put money aside for that.
Councillor Danaka?
I have no problem giving a letter of support, but I mean, if they get the 2020 Canadian Championships, they can come back with a proper filled out application with a budget, because there's nothing here.
Good, agreed.
That's my suggestion.
Agreed.
Okay, any other comment? Councillor Stenhouse?
Well, are we talking about the second?
We can, because it's all part of this one.
You have the first motion on the floor. We should vote on that.
Yeah.
But we can still have the conversation.
It's still a conversation at this time,
Because
because we
I
might
would-
not make a second motion.
Might not be involved.
My point was strictly that if we're giving the letter, when will we find out if the letter's been accepted and the bid's been accepted? Because that's part of it, giving the letter, is having some accountability for it. And then that would then affect our budget.
Councillor
after that.
Stenhouse?
See, I have problems with committing for many years as our budget changes per year and the town's finances and everything. I would like to see it year by year application, not committing too many years down the road due to fluctuating job markets, cost of living, doubling the price of.
But is the funding part of the bid letter?
No.
So if we don't say anything about the funding, the letter will still carry as much weight as if we did. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Rose?
And I just want to say I agree with Councillor Danaka that it can be definitely done in two steps. We can give them the letter of support. I think it's awesome that they're trying to host the Canadian Championships here, and I think that would be great for the community. But we also just hosted the Senior Games, which was, again, great for the community. There was a number of participants. They filled hotels. They ate at restaurants. We gave them $0, and we charged them rent on spaces. So we have to be careful about our message. We can't just give one tournament a lot of dollars and another tournament $0. So I think that having them come forward again, and at that time we can reassess whether we provide dollars or whether we encourage them to look at the chamber for sponsorship, because the business community is the community that probably prospers more so than the tax-paying resident of the residential area of High Prairie. And maybe there's something we can do with recreation, that maybe we can give them some donation that way going forward with space.
Okay. Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I think, what does it cost to put on this event? Are they asking us for the full amount? Are they asking others? There's so many other questions about the funding part that we don't know. And so, Brian, you can probably pass that along once we move on the motion to approve their letter of support. And if they get it, they can come back and answer some of those other questions for us. Okay, so we got a motion to support with a letter. All those in favor? Carried. Yeah. Moving on to policy 03-2012. Can I get a motion? Councillor Rose.
The council approved policy 03-2012 with the amendments in 5-02-7 stating that RSPs can only be withdrawn for retirement, house buying, or educational purposes.
Okay, so this is a request that council put forth already. So I don't think we'll have a lot of disagreement here, but we'll open it up if anybody has anything they'd like to mention at this time. Seeing none, let's vote on this motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, you had it opposed. Okay, but okay, let's move on to the next item, the trail system, page 119. Councillor Gilroy.
The council received the request to upkeep J.C. Park and the trail systems year-round. Be received for information.
All right. Any discussion on this? Councillor Stenhouse?
So I've read this letter, and I, for one, totally agree with the editor of this letter. This is part of our recreation that we supply here. We do keep the pool open year-round. The arenas are well accessible to everyone during the winter for the hockey and everything. We have another population that uses this park year-round, and I'm actually one of them, and I agree with why couldn't we spend a little more time on our, like our public delegation said, our little gem hidden back there, that we should upkeep the JC Park, at least plow a trail for our walkers who need to get out in the sunshine and enjoy the outdoors.
Okay. Councillor Gilroy?
Once again, I'm going to sort of pass the buck over to Mr. Martinson because I took administration's suggestion here, and I'd like to know why they came up with that suggestion.
We just found out in previous years that in trying to maintain the trails out there, there's drifting snow, and you'd have to have a machine out there just about every day. And we clean sidewalks right now, all the sidewalks in High Prairie, which takes at least a day to go over all the sidewalks. So that was the main reason why. And if you're not maintaining them, you're under liability issues then.
So we couldn't just do like a once a month type plowing the trails? Not an everyday thing?
And you can plow when we first tried it, we tried plowing the trails, and within 2 hours they were drifted in again. So you couldn't even see trails out there because the snow was just straight across. So.
It's a very windy area.
Yeah, I know.
I'll get, not Councillor Walker. I was almost going to call you Councillor.
Once you open up a trail to, like the sign right at JC Park says use at your own risk, because once you open up a trail and you start to plow it, you inherit liability. And liability includes if we get freezing rain, we get ice on those, and then there's certain aspects of where those trails are located. You can't use certain things for controlling ice control because of the proximity to the river, right? Yeah. So there are concerns that and also some of the schools, I don't know if they use them anymore, but the school was using those for cross-country ski trails at one point during the winter time. So that was one of the reasons too why we didn't plow them any longer. And when we tried to plow them, like CEO Martin said, it was a nightmare. And it is very expensive.
So, like I go to the park probably quite often, and we have these foot trails, and I've seen people cross country skiing, I've seen them snowshoeing, people are walking their dogs, they're pulling toboggans with their kids on it. With these signs that say that it's closed, are we actually trespassing them?
No.
So
It's just closed, use at your own risk. Right. We're not maintaining that.
but there's no way we could just, like I said, okay, no.
Once you start to plow them, then you're opening yourself up to liability. So it's either all in or all out.
That was discussed at previous councils, and at that time, councils said that we're maintaining enough sidewalks within the residential areas in High Prairie, and now that we've got the trails going out, even out to the new hospital and that there was enough walking trails within sidewalks within our community if people wanted to get exercise.
Councillor Gilroy?
And just a forward to what Vern said, I walk to the hospital at least once a week along the trails that are maintained. And when you come to the bridge, you can't plow that bridge the same with the tractor because it's too narrow. Plus, it's over the water. Right, and so I agree. You do as much as you can, but and trust me, doing all the walking I do around this town, I know where the drifts are. I know where it needs plowing, where it gets icy. I've experienced it, and to add that, you probably would have to add an extra employee to the rec board to deal with that almost full time during the winter. I think just for liability's sake.
So what?
It is under the maintenance of the rec board, as well, under the intermunicipal. Walking trails maintenance is the rec board responsibility, and they don't have equipment to do these. So it would be public works, responsibility.
So my question, just as I sit here and think a little bit, like Councillor Stenhouse, is just to run over there once a month, and and just to, when you're walking on it, trails get uneven and it's a little bit harder to walk. If you can go there and plow it and just make it smooth and make it a little bit better to walk, I see it as a totally different atmosphere for walking than walking around town. Like, you got your dog, you don't like to, it's not as free to go out there and let your dog run or whatever. But what liability are we incurring when we say, we're going to go out there and plow it once a month? What's the concern?
Open something up, people expect it to be open. 10 minutes later, like Martin said, it could be drifted or it could be snow.
Yeah,
All of a sudden,
I get that.
every snowfall, every melt that you get, you're out there plowing it because they slip and fall. You can get sued. You get sued, but it's not even our responsibility over here in the corner.
So you're saying that, okay, if we advertise it as being open,
Once we acknowledge that we're going to open it, then there will be that expectation of liability. There will become an increasing expectation from citizens that plow.
that it's not good enough, like what the letter states. It sounds like this person, and for myself, would be very happy if it was done once, every 2 weeks or a month, just to level it out and make it smooth. Like, I would agree with that. But the
Still
liability,
officially call it closed and still say travel or use at your own risk? Don't have to-
What
don't have to
if,
make the announcement
what
that
if
says you're doing it.
just a resident went with their snow blower and blew a trail?
That's not our issue then. The town did not, well, basically we'd have to go stop them because we're not acknowledging that trail is open.
But we knowingly know people are using this park year-round.
But we're not promoting. If we go in there and we plow it, then we're promoting.
But this
We'll do whatever council decides.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do. Right?
Yeah.
But this is just informing people what potential is.
What if the risk is already there and we don't realize it? Because we own the trail system
Exactly.
and now we know that there's access during the winter, right? We don't put up big gates that say locked, you can't go.
Well, there is
you can't go in.
signs that says that it's,
The main gate is locked.
No, but you can't walk in, right?
These trails
no,
are
no,
not
you
for
can,
anything.
there's a walking,
There, you
yeah,
can walk right in.
yeah.
So
And
if
then
somebody
it's,
were to fall because of the snow being there, are we just as liable as if we?
No, because we're not promoting them.
but why are we not promoting it? It's our JC Park that
I know it's
we
Like
use.
I said, we're only going on what council's told us to do in the past, and we'll do what council tells us to do in the future.
And there are people are there daily at JC Park in the winter. That I know.
I like Councillor Rose's idea, just keep it as closed so that we don't have it. But then when we have, and I truly see it as not being a time when you've got, main snow removal to do for the town and you got to do that. But when you got an extra hour or two to run around and just plow that on the quiet, and it would make that trail system better, and still advertise it, not promote it. But would we open ourselves up for liabilities? That's the only thing that worries me, but
What if we investigate that?
Yes.
yeah.
I'd like admin to actually investigate the liability since that we're all talking about it.
Yeah, good. Okay,
So if you'd like me to amend my motion to make it, instead of for information, I will make a friendly amendment to suggest that we direct administration to investigate the liability issue and all other relevant information in regard to the upkeep of J.C. Park and the trail systems year-round.
okay, and I think, okay.
Because we're all talking about the liability issue. So let's get someone who actually deals with it all the time to give us better information.
And I think if we look at it from, yeah, that's fine to amend the motion, that's great, but I think just when you're looking into it, Brian, to look into it from the aspect of we're not advertising it as being open, but we're just running our snow clearing machine over it, once every 2 weeks or when we have time, kind of thing. As opposed to saying it's open and we're going to try and keep it clean, we're not advertising that. But for the residents that use it, to clear it off once in a while, I don't know. But as long as we're not opening ourselves up to too much, I would like to see that happen.
Like if you require a sign that says what we're doing, maybe low grade, maintenance on the trails, but the trails are considered still closed and there's no guarantee of access.
Something of
I
that.
would also check if Rec Board is operating that for us, according to the intermunicipal. We need to check to see with them as well, if they're willing to take on the responsibility.
They gotta walk behind snow blower.
Because, but that's the intermunicipal, is that they're in charge of J.C. Park, isn't
Yeah.
it?
There's others,
So-
like that.
So that's one of the couple things you look at in that particular investigation.
Because
Just one last comment about J.C. Park. And I know the people using it are using the garbage cans. They're picking up after their animals and the odd swipe through to empty the garbages to, if we're going to open up J.C. Park. Because people are using it. And that is ours. That's something that's well used.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Just before I do that, we've heard from everybody except Councillor Danaka. Did you want to weigh in on anything here?
Well, I'm just listening to the debate, and we always defer to administration giving us the proper advice. We've had our Public Works Superintendent, Vern, who is saying, be careful, because you're into the liability issue. And why aren't we not listening to what he says and giving as much credence as to what he says, as opposed to when we get an opinion from the CA or the treasurer? We take their word to guide us and say, okay, we'll go with them. We like that. We'll believe what you say. But when Vern says something in regards to this, we don't give him the credence and say, why aren't we believing him as much as we believe the CA or the treasurer when he tells us that we have a liability issue? That's my question. I believe Vern.
Oh, I don't think anybody doesn't believe Vern. Has Vern talked to a lawyer to get that advice? And we've got a scenario that we're proposing that's different than opening it up. That's my opinion on it. I'm not saying, I understand what he's saying. If we open this up, we're opening ourselves up for liability. I get that. What I'm seeing is if we keep it as closed and we just run over it sort of unofficially and doing it that way. So it's not a scenario that's been presented before.
Well, I'll see what the motion is, basically to send it back to administration to come back with pros and cons, or if we're opening it up to a liability issue. So until we have that information,
Correct.
I'm not supporting this. until I have that information.
And that's what we're asking for. Yeah. Okay, so do you have the motion? Or you know, sort of? So,
The council direct administration to check on liabilities issues for
surrounding,
the winter maintenance of the water trails.
right. Yeah. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Moving on to website design. Get a motion on this one? Councillor Rose slowly puts up her hand.
Giving everybody a chance.
Yeah.
The council direct administration to send out requests for proposals to various companies requesting cost and proposal for the design of a new website page and bring back recommendations to the 2018 final budget deliberations.
Okay, I'll just sort of start on this one, and I think some of the background was given that I got a phone call from Wrap Trading, and I got the phone call, I think, partly because I had asked Nancy to do some changes to the website, and some of those, because I noticed when I was on it there was lots of errors and stuff, so I sent her a list, and I think she might have made some of them and sent some of them off to Wrap, because they are the ones looking after the website. And they said, yeah, we'll make some of those changes. However, you know, we had a while ago, in our previous administration had said we should look at doing a revamp of this website. And I said, well, send us your proposal and I'll bring it forward. So that's why it's here. And they were saying that they could increase the speed and, make it more friendly for mobile devices. It wasn't really designed for mobile devices, and more people are accessing it from mobile devices. So that was where this came from. I'd also, I would support this motion, because part of what I think we need to do is look at as our town is, we've talked about branding. I don't know if it's this council's wish to, maybe rebrand the town and change the logo and stuff and give it a new image. But if we're going to do that, there's no use changing the website now, and then if we want to do that and we make that a priority in our strategic planning, go ahead and change that again. It would seem like we're duplicating it. So somewhere in between, we need to come up with our strategic plan and whether or not we want to change our look and feel. Councillor Gilroy.
My problem with this would be the time frame. It's talking about final budget deliberations. We're under the gun pretty much for finalizing everything for 2018 when the treasurer gets back. And we were at our previous discussions. We were trying to trim, but at the same time give added value and do what we could. And so, to me, as much as this is important, I would rather look at this later when we deal with things that are like you just talked about branding. I don't want to pay all the money out and then suddenly rebrand and then change everything. I think we're moving a little too fast on this one, and if we have the extra income halfway through the year, revisit it. But I don't really think that, I think we've got enough on our plate for looking at how to give the residents the top dollar for their money for 2018.
So you're suggesting that basically just receive this for information at this time, and then when we're more ready, then go out for tender for other ones, or perhaps, or back to them, or go for a
after we've
tender.
had a strategy meeting, if we're going to rebrand, let's get it all done at once and just bring
Yeah.
the whole proposal out to the different companies instead of piecemeal.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Councillor Rose?
It has been something that we've been talking about for over 4 years, so it's like putting it off is a bit of a concern for me. I'd like to see that we go forward, but I do appreciate what Councillor Gilroy is saying. How does administration feel about the website? I know we're having some challenges with uploading with your videos, right? So do you feel like we really should be looking at this in a more timely fashion? I mean, I hear the branding thing, but I do think that's a design, that's a design change that you can make. I think some of the challenges are more are different challenges with the website. One of them is the mobile device one, and that has little to do with, you can change your design later if you have access then to be able to get it on the mobile device. And if we're struggling with getting things sent to the website, getting them uploaded properly on the website, those are things that we might want to deal with more quickly. So maybe this ends up being 2 pieces, but maybe it's part of it, and maybe the same cost though. Like maybe we can still allocate the same amount of dollars, but so much of it gets done now, and then maybe there's a design in 6 months that then it gets updated.
Just one comment. I don't think that a redesign of the website is going to increase the upload speeds of stuff, because that's an internet issue internally.
So it's not
no, that won't
It
help.
depends who gets the RFP. You can't assume it's gonna go to RAP.
No, it doesn't matter who it goes to. Regardless, we could have any company redesign our website, but it's not going to increase our ability to upload to the internet because we have an extremely slow internet connection. That's the bottom line. So it's not going to solve that problem is all I am saying. It will address, like a redesign of the website would address the mobile, the iPads, the phones, the formatting so that it would format better on those devices. And they claim that it would put this onto a faster website. So when somebody goes to the website and clicks on a page, it'll pop up a little quicker. It wouldn't take as long. So it's more for the end user than it is going to be for us.
Well, my understanding too is that things like, so we're struggling even to get uploaded. We don't personally do our uploads for not necessarily the video, but for agenda packages, minutes. That goes to Rap Trading. They upload it, and like this process takes a lot of time. So this option allows us to get quotes from this company as well as different companies, where that process is handled more in-house and automatic, because we've already looked at some of these companies that if you use them for like the company that we looked at for the minutes, automatically that's uploaded, right? So some of the challenges that we're having now where our minutes and our agenda packages are behind, that's addressed. So it's not just the design that has to change. So, I don't think that it's a problem. I would support getting proposals. I don't think we're making any decision besides getting proposals, right? And we're just concerned that we're getting them too early about it.
Councillor Danaka?
Well, we've all discussed the many issues that we're having with the website in terms of uploading or whatever. I think before we send out a request for proposal, we have to narrow down what it is that we want to be able to do with that website. Do we want, mobile uploads? Personally, the town's website is tired, and it needs something. So before we decide if we're going to go with an RFP to get somebody to look at the website, we need to figure out what we want that website to do. And I don't know if that's a strategic plan issue that we, it's okay. What do we want people to be able to do on our website? Narrow it down, say, okay, this is what we want, then do an RFP, then decide, okay, this is the quotes. Is it something that we want? And add it to the budget.
Yeah, good point. So before we can even go out for an RFD, you need to be clear on what we want to do. Now, RAP has an idea of what they would like to see from our website and see the improvements, but is it what our council and what administration wants to see? So it might be getting a group together to look at the website and say, hey, these are the changes we'd like to see. Then we can put it out for RFD. Yeah, that makes sense.
Get some community engagement.
Well, and there's lots of examples of websites out there. And then, of course, we can make sure if we put it out for tender that it's mobile friendly and all of those good things. Easier to upload. Councillor Rose?
And I agree with that in theory, but I think the only challenge to that, and what we may gain from sending out requests for proposals, is we're not the experts. We don't really even know what we want, because we don't even know what's offered, right? So we don't know for sure what somebody's going to say. Hey, take a look. This is what we can do for you. Like, we have this design. We have this. This is what we do for municipalities. This is what we've done for these other municipalities. Like, we either do our own research and we research those municipalities, or we ask them and say, hey, what do you recommend? Show us a proposal on what you'd recommend for us, because they're the ones that are already the experts at it, right? So we either got to spend our time doing that, which is fine, but we don't know for sure what all we're looking for.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Kind of. But I mean, either way, it can be accomplished. And I do think that Councillor Danaka's right. Strategic planning needs to happen quickly, and that can be that can be a conversation that we can have there.
Okay, so we have a motion to put it out for, maybe it's not a request for, not for an exact amount, or just like costs, or do we just want to get ideas on what they could do?
Could be that. Request for proposals for
A redesign?
municipal redesigns.
Something like that, yeah.
But when you're asking for, you're not putting into the final budget deliberations any dollar value.
Yeah.
So what's the point of putting it in the budget when there's no dollar value on it? Are we going to make one up?
Yeah, good point.
I mean,
Yeah, no, that's a good. And I know just from talking with a few others that this price is, I think, a very good price compared to what others have gotten theirs done. I've talked to a few other towns, and I think their pricing is very reasonable with this wrap trading. But I mean, that's just from some informal discussions with others.
we're not questioning the price here.
No.
We're questioning.
Okay.
We're questioning
Whether
whether
to put it into our deliberations and there's no price for it. We are questioning how long it'll take for at least 3 tenders, hopefully. We're deciding what needs to go on it. I mean, there's a difference between what we want on it and the current problems we have right now. Is there any way of, without putting it into the budget, we can address the problems, some of the problems that are that we're having now? Is there no way we can do that without putting out, doing all the stuff?
Well, yeah, I think in my mind, this is where I see we could put this out as a request for proposal. This is just what I'm thinking. Put it out for a request for proposal. See what we get coming back in. Then we would know the price. Hopefully, it's in time for budget deliberations. If it's not, we'd have to see if we could fit it in somewhere, or we put in a placeholder in the budget deliberations if it's a priority, and then we would go with that. We might sit down, come up with what do we want to see in this, and take it back and finalize it before we gave out the final tender. But we'd have some prices that had been tendered out. We can pick the best deal, and we'd have more of an idea of what's out there. And we could sit down and even have maybe a group that got together to say, a web redesign ad hoc group that would work with administration and council's desires and put it together. But I think the step would be to start with getting a request for proposals. So that was the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, defeated. Do we want to have another motion on that, or is it just defeated and going nowhere at this point?
I don't know if you caught my vote, but I was for it.
Oh, were you for it?
I was for it.
Oh, I didn't see that.
But
No.
you called it so quick that you called the and I think you thought my vote was opposed,
Yes, I did.
so do you want to do it again?
Okay, I will. No, I didn't see your hands. I'm sorry. So all those in favor? So we got 3 opposed. Okay, so it's carried. We'll go with that. All right, cemetery bylaw. Oh, we're getting too boring. We got the media leaving. Nothing of interest now, eh?
It's a dead issue, right?
Yeah. It's a dead issue, the cemetery. That's bad. Okay, Councillor Gilroy.
The council provide, I thought we had second reading, but okay, that we provide second reading to the cemetery bylaw 16-2017, this 23rd day of January 2018.
All right. Any questions, comments on this? We've had one reading already. None? All those in favor? Carried. Do we have another motion on this one?
Why not?
Councillor Gilroy, you're on a roll.
We're the outside. Unless it's going to be Councillor Walker over there.
Yeah, that's right.
The council provide third and final reading to the cemetery bylaw 16-2017, this 23rd day of January 2018.
All those in favor? Carried.
I just wanted to have council, if they notice the appendix B that my staff has designed for the
And actually, I dealt with that this past week with a double. I had a double funeral that I did that had to do with both a casket and a urn. So yeah, very appropriate.
Okay, next agenda item is the Regional Sustainability Initiative. Any motions there? Everybody's quiet. I'll take a shot at this one, and that council create a Regional Sustainability Initiative Committee and appoint Councillor Rose, Mayor Panasic, and Councillor to be named to the Regional Sustainability Initiative Committee and have administration bring back new terms of reference for council's approval. And I can give a little bit of background on this, and then we can open it up for more discussions. We've been talking a lot about broadband, and this is basically a broadband initiative, but the committee wanted to name it from broadband to something that was a little broader and didn't just call it sort of an internet connection, because it is much more in terms of, we just had this presentation. It's about social development. It's about improving the quality of your life. It's about economic development. So it's not just broadband, and we wanted to sort of show that in a name. And this is sort of, and when I say we, it's the county reps, it's the Steve Epley and Craig Dobson that are the consultants that have been hired to do that feasibility study for us. So that's what I mean by we wanted to show a broader term. And administration, yeah, thank you, yeah. So we, at the last meeting, we were talking about getting a pilot project going. And to get a pilot project going, we would have to get a committee that would be working as a working committee to start getting this project going and happening in the next while. And there's a lot of decisions that would have to be made and those sorts of things. So that's what this committee was all about. There was the initial thoughts for this committee was to put 3 people from the town, 3 people from the county, have the consultants and have administration on it also. And this would be the working committee that would work together to answer the questions of where would this be located? Would it be underground or overground connections? Who would we hire to do it? Some of those decisions that they could start to make and bring back references to our councils for approvals and moving it ahead. But we just needed the, I guess, approval to start this committee, appoint some people to the committee so that we can move ahead and keep exploring that possibility. Councillor Gilroy.
As I was in with the, I guess, original discussions over a year ago, I'd be open to being a third person on that committee. I believe it's an important one, and so I'd be very interested in seeing the new terms of reference when it comes there. So I'd be in favor of this.
Okay, and I should add that I didn't include Councillor Long in here, and the only reason I didn't go with the recommendation was that I text Councillor Long, like he texted me to say he wasn't going to be here, and I knew that this was coming up on the agenda, so I asked him if he was interested, and he was reluctant to take on anything more. So he said, I'd rather not. And that's why I didn't include his name, so it was open to anybody else that might be interested, and I didn't want to put anybody's name in there if they weren't interested. Councillor Danaka.
So this committee that's being struck, it's just the county and the town. There's no public at large on this committee whatsoever.
At this point, no.
Okay.
The intent of the committee and to move this project, if we're going to go ahead, is to get public involvement. The committee feels, I'm already talking like it's foreign, but the thing of the broadband is that you cannot move anything ahead without a lot of public involvement, and I think that would be a big part of anything moving this thing ahead. We know we need to get the public involved, and so that, like, all of the initiatives that have been successful have had a good push from the public and others to go ahead to move this all forward. And I think it's part of this is just to get a pilot project going in 2018, and so there's lots to get done in a short time. But if we're going to spread that out to the entire thing, that's a much bigger project, and it's going to take a lot more participation to get that going. But a very good question. Yeah. So I would add, is there anybody else interested in being, like I got Councillor Gilroy, and I think that's great, but nobody else wants to.
It doesn't look like an interested face.
No. Okay. So I am going to make an amendment to my motion to say and add Councillor Gilroy as the third member on that. Any other discussion on this agenda item? No? All right. All those in favor? Carried. Special meeting. Page 135. Okay. I'm going to make a motion that we call a special meeting on January 30th, 2018 at 7 p.m. to address a backlog of items due to the suspension of the January 9th, 2018 council meeting. Councillor Gilroy.
Do we have a poll on who will be here? Will we have enough for a quorum?
If we pass this.
I don't know. I haven't taken any poll, so I can't comment.
Councillor Courtney's back.
Yes, he'll be
I
back.
didn't know how long he was going to be away. You know, I don't want to put it forward if we don't have a quorum again.
Are you going to be here?
I will be here.
Does it
Councillor
matter?
Stenhouse? Councillor, okay, so we've got one, no, yes, yes. I didn't ask Councillor Long that question. Does anybody know if he's available?
I have no idea.
Councillor Danaka, are you available?
Yes.
And Councillor Rose, you will still be here? Yeah.
Yes, I will be here.
Okay. So we would have enough for a quorum.
Okay.
Let's vote.
Let's hope. Well, I think we got enough here. Well, no, we only got 3 here that are officially committed, and then we've got another. I think.
You're not officially committed?
4.
Oh, 4. Oh, sorry.
We got quorum.
What time is it? It's getting too late. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting late. So we got quorum plus. All right. Any other questions on this?
We need to vote.
I know. I'm just asking if there's any other comments on it. Nope.
Sorry.
All in favor? Carried.
Thought you were moving forward without a vote.
No, yeah. The Alberta Community Partnership Letter. A motion on that? Councillor Rose.
The council agrees to partner with Big Lakes County and provide a letter of support in their application in applying for the Alberta Community Partnership Inter-Municipal Collaboration Grant.
And I'm going to ask our CAO to give us a little bit more background on this request, because it must have came to you, right?
It did.
Okay.
What had happened is Big Lakes County had thought that they had requested this letter of support back in September, October of 2017, but we could not find any correspondence, so I contacted Roy, their CAO, and asked them to forward the information on to us, and so they provided us with a letter from the town of Swan Hills and basically asked us for a letter of support.
My question on this is, what are we supporting for sure? Like they're applying on a grant, so I mean, I don't have a problem with applying on a grant, but is this going to impact the town? Because it's the intermunicipal collaboration grant. Is this for part of our intermunicipal negotiations? And it'll help cover the costs of those?
I've seen some stuff on the internet that there is grants available for the inter-partnership collaboration part of it, so that's probably why Swan Hills and Big Lakes are applying, because there's a grant to have a company come in and, draw up
help lead you through
the process. So I don't believe that we need that, because we have basically an intermunicipal agreement with Big Lakes County, and it's not 100% done, but I've been trying for the last 2 years to get it finalized, but with all the changes that councils have been doing with the rec board and everything else, it's hopefully we'll have it signed off by July.
So this may or may not be grant money that we would use in our negotiations with the county? Probably not, okay. But we're just supporting them.
In their efforts for grants.
Okay. Any other questions on it? Councillor Danak?
I'm just looking for a little clarification in the recommended actions. The council agrees to partner with and provide a letter of support. So we're providing a letter of support saying that we will partner with them. Is that what this means?
I think what they mean in the partnership is that for Big Lakes County, they have to partnership with every body that's within their boundaries. So
Okay, I just
I'm
wanted.
just thinking that with a partnership also that it will kind of reflect on us too. So
Okay, I just was looking.
I
for
think it'll make their
clarification as to-
it'll make their bid for their grant stronger.
Councillor Rose?
I think just my understanding of it is that the Big Lakes County is applying for it because it's grant funding for ICFs. We're forced into these relationships now, but because they're the main player, they have to have an agreement with Swan Hills. They have to have an agreement with us. It's grant funding to help support those frameworks. So I mean, it will in essence help that agreement with us, but because they're the player that has to put more agreements in place, it makes sense that they're the ones that actually apply for the funds. I think.
Any other comments on this? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Moving on to the addendum, the Caribou Town Hall meeting in Slave Lake. Any motions here? I'll make this motion just because I'm a little bit informed of it from the Alberta elected, or the Northern Alberta elected leaders meeting that was on last week. And I'm going to make a motion that council send letters to Danielle Larrabee, MLA for Lesser Slave Lake, Honorable O'Neill Collier, Minister of Agriculture and Forestry, and Brian, I'm not sure how you say his last name, Mawicki, Director of Land and Environment Planning, with a CC to the town of Slave Lake, requesting that the government of Alberta hold a meeting in Slave Lake to discuss the draft policy on caribou range plans. I'll give you what I know, just as a bit of background, is at the Northern Alberta elected leaders meeting, there was a lot of concerns from some of the other municipalities, especially Mackenzie County, down in the Whitecourt area, because of the push for putting in a Species at Risk Act, which really impacts what companies can do, both forestry and oil and gas, and what they're allowed to do when they're in any kind of caribou range. The big concern is that it'll just put a halt to any development anywhere in the north. When you read the act and in their interpretation of it, this will put a stop to forestry, oil and gas, and everything in the region. And so they want to get to the government to say, well, let's look at this reasonably, and not to say we don't want to support caribou, but there's some of the act is saying that, for example, you have to put on a buffer zone to their travel corridors, but their buffer zones are so big that they overlap with every other zone, so really there is no area that you can develop. And maybe let's look at those buffer zones. Maybe they don't need to be that big. And so we can still have some room to negotiate and work in these areas. So that's what they want to do. They want to have a meeting. The government already has meetings planned in 4 communities. They are targeting one in High Level. Is that in this? There's one in Whitecourt. There's one in Fort McMurray and one in Cold Lake, I think. And what Slave Lake is proposing is that they create a 5th session where you would interact with the government. And basically he's saying in there that they would like to have one so that the local companies don't have to travel so far to have their input. And so that's what they're suggesting. In my opinion, it's great. If they can get another one in, it would be great. We'd have more input for the government when they're making their decision. And if not, then, people will have to travel further. But if we can get the government to travel one extra time, it'll cut down on costs for all of the communities and the companies involved. So that's what I know. So no questions, comments? No. Okay, well, let's vote on this. All those in favor of a letter? Carried. Moving down to staff and CAO written report. A motion on this one? Councillor Gilroy?
The council receives CAO Brian Martinson's written report and action list for information.
All right. Counselor,
I got a couple other things I want to add to my report for council. Alberta Transportation and Utilities have given me a couple different dates. I originally had February 1st set up for a meeting with them to discuss the intersection out at the Tim Hortons intersection. So now they've got back to us today and they said February 5th or 8th for a meeting date at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, if council is available on them dates. So it's a Monday or a Thursday,
and they want to meet at what time?
1 o'clock in the afternoon. And once that date is picked, I would like to invite Peavine and their councillors, if with approval from this council, and Big Lakes County councillors.
Good idea.
So.
So let's just deal with those right while we've got it here. Does the 5th or so we got the 5th works? Does it work for you? During the day, probably not going to work.
I will make it a priority either day.
So you can make it.
Evening meetings.
Can you make either of them?
I would prefer the 5th.
Okay. So we've got 2 that can make the 5th, and that can. Oh.
Well, working with them is like pulling teeth.
Nancy, does Michael work the Mondays, or is he on
No, he usually is working the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I think
Sunday?
and or Monday. What's that? I think they'd work for him. Yeah, the 5th would work during the day. So
1 o'clock. Here.
okay. So that's
Yep, and I'll invite the Peavine councillors and the Big Lakes County councillors. Any councillors available to meet the St. Andrews students tomorrow morning at 8:45 to 9?
I'm already committed to that,
I know, but anybody else, or
at least till 10.
it's 8:45, Debbie.
that's AM.
That's AM.
Yeah.
Can you make it, Judy?
I did it last year, and
Yes.
I won't be
And
there
are
the entire time.
they doing a tour of the fire hall also? So they usually bring half in here, and then other half goes to the fire hall, and then they switch around. And they come in and ask questions to council,
No,
and I think they have a presentation here to give
And
to
what
the
we've done
councillors.
traditionally, if you call it traditionally, is that a couple of councillors, whoever is available, sits right where the Bryans are. And then we allow the students to fill in the rest here and then the gallery, because it's quite a few students. And then after that, quite after they contact the council to help give some reference for a future paper they write on good government.
Nancy?
They have a presentation they're going to do, and they don't have sound, they're going to actually stand up and present it to
Yes.
whatever council shows up. So.
I might pop in for 10 minutes, but that's all I got before I go. So but it'll just be to say hello and move out.
Yeah.
I can't stay.
Okay. And the other thing is, did you get an invite to AA and DNC by Big Lakes?
No,
Okay. Are you available to go on that?
I don't even know the dates.
I think it's March 15th.
Don't remember.
Something.
It's on my desk.
Yes. And Roy also, I didn't tell the RCMP tonight, but Roy was contacted by the head of the RCMP in Grand Prairie, and that is one of the subjects he's going to be talking about at AAMDC. So So traditionally, the mayor was invited by Big Lakes, but I'll check with them, and if they are, I'll let you know the dates and see if you're available.
Okay.
Because I know last year Linda couldn't make it, and they asked for another council member, and Councilor Rose attended, so
Yeah.
we'll send somebody.
Okay. Yeah, we'll send some.
It's in the Shaw Conference Center in
Is that one, is
Edmonton.
it February?
I think it's in March, middle of March.
What was the one you were talking about that you needed someone to, I can't remember the one in Halifax is the one in May?
That's the FCM.
Oh, FCM.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's coming up at the
I'm
next one.
confused with all these extra meetings.
Yeah.
Glad I have a day timer.
Okay, so any questions for Brian on his report? Councillor Gilroy?
Just the one correction that Brian was going to make anyway.
Yeah.
Brian Dawson is the president and CEO of the
IDA.
not Rexall. And I'd like to find out any further developments with Samuel Alexander on, do they need us to do any extra work that will help them get the funding to tear down the old hospital?
He never indicated that to me. He said they were still waiting for funding from the government to
Well, do they want a letter from the town and county helping, giving them support to actually get it torn down, because it's a vital part of our economic plan to, whether we put a school on there or not, that's not the purpose. The purpose is we need that building down. So do they need our help in?
He never indicated that to me, so.
Well, we've written many letters already for support, like it's gone out to, so I think all of the support that we can offer has already been offered.
We're actually supporting HS this time, not our own. It's a big difference.
Yeah, well, we're coming at it from
HS
ours.
and us, we don't always get
Yeah.
on the same page.
Okay.
For the old hospital, if they are going to tear it down, is there any possible way that the fire department could get in there and do some training? I mean, that would be a fabulous place to go in and do door breaches and things like that. Training for the fire department.
You'd have to contact Board of Health Services.
Burn, you can camp in there? Start with a camp burn?
Yes, sir. Do you have contacts that I can get a hold of to stop the work?
Find contacts.
Yeah, Samuel Alexander might be a good place to start. Yeah, he seemed to be working on it. And, yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, that's endless opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions for our CAO?
So all of these completed ones that are on here, are they gonna be off at the next agenda? Okay.
I have one question, and it's about the Tim Hortons. Have they given any indication on whether they're moving ahead? Like they've got approval from transportation now?
We haven't heard nothing back from them since the traffic impact assessment.
Okay.
So,
But,
the last that we heard is that they were going to start in the spring.
okay, so, but they've gotten the approval from transportation? Okay. It'd be good to know if they're planning on starting, because that'll be a big negotiating thing once we work with, before we meet with transportation. As long as they're still going ahead, I'd like to know that, or a commitment from them.
Transportation had asked for agenda, so they're not blindsided when they come in here. They want to know some of the questions that the council could be asking. So when I ask the county, I'll ask them for.
Is it just Ryan that's coming, or
No,
a few of them?
there's two for sure. I think one of the development officers, the one that does the permits and that for development.
I think for our, and as we're talking now, maybe we can add that as one of our agenda items for the 30th, is to have a discussion of how we would like to approach transportation and what are arguments for them paying and make sure we have them well laid out. So when we go into the meeting with them, that we're prepared to, you know, address everything and we don't forget any good negotiating points.
They can have the answers when they get here, so.
Yeah. Well, we'll put them on the spot a little bit to say, look, you know, you should be paying because, you know, you've paid out at here and you haven't done this, and, you know, whatever our rationale is that you guys own the highway, we don't own it, so we're buying you a highway, right? That doesn't make sense. So those kinds of arguments that we can be prepared to deliver. All right, and
This can either be to Brian, because Brian's been talking to the county. Are there any further developments that we know about the funding for the schools and any permits that are pending for the, since next Wednesday, put it on your calendar, next Wednesday is the open house for the design for Northern Lakes College, and I think we should be there to support them from that. But I'd like to know if there's any updates on funding for the schools or where they're at with. Is there any way of getting any of those updates for? Because I have people in the community asking me, and I have no answers.
if there was any money coming for the schools, the ministers would be making a huge announcement. Yeah, so there's nothing that I've heard.
Are surveyors out there?
Out at.
Do you not have to have, does the town of High Prairie not have bylaws and regulations for town property to have surveying permits before they go on property and start surveying? Because there was surveyors and there are stakes out there on property. So with
Vern's ready to answer your question.
The only thing that we know that they come in and did was take soil samples. And that's what those stakes are marking, individual places where they drilled down and took soil samples. And that's for foundation, and there's no reason you can do that wherever you want to do it.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Councilor.
Who plowed that? Where they put those survey stakes? Was that the town or was that their surveyors?
It would have been a private, we didn't get involved. The only thing we did there was do locates.
It probably would have been someone from the school, since the school owns the property. They'd be responsible for plowing.
It's a big with.
No, but they have their own snowplows for the school.
Yeah.
We've got a Bobcat in there.
Okay, the other question I had, Brian, was around the new gas station that's got the Husky. Any developments on that?
I think Marion's advertised now in the paper for.
It's been a couple of weeks, so that's been done. Was there any objections?
No, we did approve at the municipal development NBC. We did approve that.
Part of
it
it
was a slight part we had to approve on the development permit,
Yes.
and that has been approved.
Okay,
So
and there was
we've done
no
our-
objections from what was advertised, so everything's clear for them to move ahead, and they've been told that?
Yes.
And have they indicated anything?
No, they haven't provided their plans yet. their
Okay.
drawings, so.
But there's nothing holding them back. Nobody's standing in their way like we had with Tim Hortons.
And that could be one of the questions that council may want to ask of Board of Transportation and Utilities. If that area keeps growing out there, are them egress lanes enough to
We
suffice?
did have that as a question to ask for Minister of Transportation on that.
Okay. All right. Okay, any other questions for our CAO? None. We have a motion to receive his report for information. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on now to our verbal and written reports. Councillor Danaka.
My report will be on the next agenda,
Okay.
so I have no report now.
Councillor Gilroy.
Actually, I think that's a very wise move. I'm going to do the same thing as Councillor Danaka, and because I do have some information I have to clarify with the Community Health and Wellness about what I'm able to disseminate. And there are some really positive things, but there's also a couple things I have to clarify with them before I can tell council. So that, I will put everything on the next one, which would be
January 30th.
January 30th. So it means
Cutoff was today.
cutoff was today. So does that mean February? Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Or you could bring in a report during the meeting, which
I
we've
could
done.
do that too.
Or if you have one done tomorrow, I might slip it in.
Well, I'll do it when the kids are here.
Okay, for me, the only item, I'll just do a quick verbal, was the only thing that really, where you guys haven't been there, of course, and that was the Northern Alberta elected leaders. And there was lots of discussion on various things, but one of the issues that was brought up, and it might impact us, and I'm bringing it, is because there is the government with their centralized assessment that's going on with the new assessment practices that the provincial government's implementing. Some of the counties were saying that that's going to impact their linear assessment, which means, and in their calculations, they see their linear calculations dropping. And it was the county of Northern Sunrise was saying it could impact them to the tune of about $2.5 million for their linear assessments would drop. Talking with the county, they were saying, well, we're way bigger than them, and so if we have more linear assessment than them, and so if theirs is dropping by 2.5, that means ours could drop by 5 to 7 million, which could impact what we get from the county in terms of money if that does come through. So the Big Lakes didn't really anticipate that changing, but after having those discussions, they're looking into it more to see if it's going to impact their assessments. So we've already talked about the species at risk. There was a big discussion that went on there. I think those were the sort of the big things that came out of that. That was the biggest things. I can put some other things in a report next time, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that one. It might come around. Oh, one other thing that they were discussing at length was how the carbon tax is impacting people, and they wanted to, as an organization, or all of them, sort of push back or try again for the government to give the county or the municipalities a break on the carbon tax, because you look at people are actually probably getting taxed 4 times for their carbon tax. You get taxed directly when you fill up at the gas pumps, or you get natural gas for your heat. And then you have to pay more taxes because the town and their administration fills up their vehicles and they have to heat their building. So now you have to ante up for that. You have to ante up for schools. When they go, they take more heat. They got to transport, so you're paying more money for schools because of the carbon tax. And you're also paying for like the seniors' lodges and the social housing. You have the costs for them go up. So, that tax keeps hitting over and over and over again. So it's not as small as you think it is. So that was one of the things that they were really pushing there too.
Have they, I know this is beating a dead horse, but have they discussed at all about the implications of the marijuana?
That didn't come up at the meeting. No. Okay, no other questions. I move my report for information. All those in favor? Carried. Councillor Rose. Okay. Councillor Stenhouse.
I have nothing to report. Mine will be at the next meeting also.
Okay. All right. With that done, meeting adjourned.